Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I want to talk about an audio issue that a lot of people get snared into, especially when they're buying their first stereo, or if they get really deep into the audiophile world and drink the Kool-Aid, and that is expensive cables. So I am an audio guy. I am a card-carrying member of the Acoustical Society of America. I do sound for a living, so I know a couple of things about sound traveling on lines. And the simple fact of the matter is that the cable that you use is by and large not important. Seriously, it's not. What I mean by that is that as long as the cable meets certain basic standards, meaning like, for instance, the connector needs to work, it needs to be able to reliably and safely couple onto this without a whole bunch of oxidation. Like, for instance, if I were hooking these up to a speaker right now, I'd probably trim them back and expose some fresh wire. But if it works in that way, you're fine. Similarly, if the gauge is thick enough, so if you're trying to power really big, powerful speakers that need a lot of power, you need a little bit more copper than if you're trying to do something very small. That's an important thing. And as long as the wiring is not outright defective, if they haven't screwed it up and miswired it, it doesn't matter what kind of cables you're using in your audio system. Seriously, guys, this is a huge thing in the audiophile world. There are many, many people who take advantage of people who want their system to sound better, and by trying to sell them stupidly expensive cables. Like AudioQuest is the brand who made this very basic cable here, but they also sell stupid cables too. They sell, these super high-end, with all these fancy boxes and shielding and cables that are this freaking thick to connect your DVD player to your freaking TV. I mean, they will sell you $500 cables, and it is just, I'm not going to say it's stupid because they're making a lot of money off of it. At some level, they are very, very effective scam artists. But the thing is, it is not a good idea to buy these. You should not do them. The very basic cables are going to be fine because, to start with, there is probably not a difference. 100%. Seriously, the nature of the cable, as long as the cable is fine, the signal that's traveling across it is gonna be okay. And if there is, let's just pretend for a moment. Let's give these guys that difference. Let's just say, okay, audiophiles, sure thing. When you buy a $500 cable rather than a 30-cent stretch of Romex, that it does actually make somehow some kind of a difference. That difference is not going to be very large. In fact, that difference is probably going to be minuscule, and in fact, I doubt that you can hear that difference. And the thing is, okay, for starters, every time that people have tested cable differences in a scientific way, rather than you buy a $500 cable, you put it in your system and you listen, you think, wow, I like my system more. That's not science. That's just you saying, I just spent $500, I better like this cable. And then you sit there and you like the cable. It makes sense. But people have tried to do blind ABX testing, where you listen to one, you listen to the other, and then you try and say, whether you hear it a third time, and you try and say, okay, that was the first, that was the real cable, or that was the cheap cable. That is a way that you can test scientifically whether there is a difference here. Nobody freaking does this with speaker cables because the speaker cables companies hate it because it shows that there's no freaking difference here. If you are sitting here arguing with me saying, no, I can hear the difference, then go do an ABX test. Get somebody who is completely uninvolved in the process to swap the cables in and out and make you identify, this is one cable, this is the other, now listen to this third one here, which one is which. If you can do that over and over again in a way that beats chance, let me know. I'd love to see it. But nobody freaking does it because it doesn't matter. But the thing is, okay, let's just pretend for a second. I'm gonna be generous here. I'm gonna hand you the next one. Let's pretend that maybe you have golden ears and you can hear the difference between a cheap cable that you use like in the wall of your house and a $500 speaker cable. The thing is, how much of that difference is actually going to be there? Is that $500 that you're thinking of spending on expensive-ass cables really going to make more of a difference than replacing something else in your system? Moving to a better digital-to-analog converter? Maybe a different turntable cartridge if that's your shtick? Or maybe just going out to a bunch of expensive dinners with your significant other? Is that little tiny difference that you may be able to hear, if that difference even exists, is that really important? Is that amount of difference worth that money? Probably not. So seriously, it doesn't freaking matter. There is, however, dumber depths that they have probed. They sell expensive power cables. This is quite literally a length of power cable that goes from a plug on one end to the back of your amplifier. And they're willing to make these cables very expensively too. They'll turn it from being, a $1.50 stretch of, sufficiently thick gauge power cord into a $500 affair. They will do that for you 100%. But the thing is, what people fail to recognize is that the rest of the cabling in your house is not expensive. And so adding expensive for that last 3 or 4 feet to the amplifier doesn't do a damn thing. And similarly, the miles and miles of cable from your household to your expensive cable to the power plant, that's not expensive either, so that's not helping you either. The power is already screwed up, so the power cables are extra stupid. And expensive digital cables are a special kind of stupid. Because seriously, a digital cable, for instance, HDMI, for instance, USB, for instance, coax, SPDIF cables, those guys are completely, they are sending a 0 and 1 signal. They are just modulating pulses up and down. There is not fidelity to capture here. It is detecting a series of on, off, well, not exactly, but you know what I'm saying here. It's just 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, over and over and over again, and then it is just turning those into a series of zeros and ones on the other end. The fidelity with which you send on, off, down the freaking signal does not matter. Seriously, it will be discarded. Even if it sent those zeros and ones in some beautiful precision, that's pretending that the cable mattered. It wouldn't matter because you're just throwing away that information at the end of it. So buying expensive digital cables is even dumber than usual. So seriously, don't buy expensive cables. I mean, you can do it. If you're running out of money, if you're running out of things to spend money on, then go ahead and do that. I mean, if the IRS is coming for you and you gotta hide money in cables, whatever, okay. But if you're just looking for audio quality improvement, cables are snake oil. By and large, they are making money by selling you something you don't need, and they're creating the need by saying, oh, this will sound better, and they'll use all kinds of audiophile, well, it'll give you better transients. Oh, it'll have better sprang in the bass frequencies. They'll make up all kinds of crap, but it's not for the real. So seriously, although you can have such a thing as bad cables, defective cables with things like bad shielding, a bad wiring, or a wire gauge that's too small for your use, by and large, any cable that you buy at a freaking store will do. Go on Amazon, order the very basic stuff. Order whatever, go to the hi-fi store and ask them what they're using for a professional, like if they've got a professional audio section. Because guess what? Sound engineers for concerts and stuff need cables too. And they, by and large, have cheap ones that work just fine and are not the fancy Audio Quest crap. And if you're looking for speaker cable, you can just buy the bulk cable that they use for home installs. It tends to be way cheaper. Or you can just use Romex cable from your freaking house. Yeah, it doesn't bend all that well, but you know what? It works great. That's what I use at home because you know what? It works fine. So seriously, any freaking cable will do. As long as the cable is basically okay, and that's a low bar to clear, you do not need to spend more money on cables. So there you go. That is my first of potentially many audiophile rants. You do not need expensive cables. They are just taking advantage of you. Seriously, don't give them money for this. There are better ways that you can put money into your sound system than that. Anyways, hope this has been interesting to you audiophiles. I'm so sorry, but let's just be real here. Unless you got ABX testing, yeah. Have yourselves a good one. Bye now.